a public event that he had at a dinner at Windsor Palace. You can just see him in the carriage right there. Look at his face. Look how sickly he looks as he's in this golden carriage being brought to Windsor Palace. Take a look at him with the royal family right here, the first pic of Trump, also with the prime minister from the state visit that was just posted as well. Could we zoom in on Donald Trump's hand right there? Yeah, that's looking really, really bad, folks. As I've described it before, it really looks like his hand was just dipped into a piranha tank at this point. It is rotting and decomposing before our eyes. I mean, it looks very, very serious. And he looked very sickly and weak as he was at this dinner doing this public speech there over at Windsor Palace. There were lots of protests taking place in Windsor, huge protests also taking place in London. I'll show you those in a bit, but he really struggled to read his speech right here. And during the speech, he pretended that he was like the first United States president to ever visit like the United Kingdom, as though like no one else had ever been to Windsor Palace before. I am the first person to ever be here. Here, play this clip.
It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. And if you think about it, it's a lot of presidents, and this was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually. But this is truly one of the highest honors of my life. Such respect for you and such respect for your country.
Here's a clean rundown of what went down at Windsor, why the visuals were so jarring, why the words were even stranger, and how the protests, congressional shenanigans back home, and a looming foreign policy move all collided to turn a gilded photo op into a revealing snapshot of priorities. Donald Trump arrived at Windsor in a golden carriage, and even before the first toast, the optics told their own story. The cameras caught him bathed in the hard light of late afternoon, pale, puffy, and visibly strained. Zoomed shots lingered on his right hand, mottled and discolored, the fingers swollen and stiff, the way skin looks after a very bad encounter with something sharp, infectious, or both. It's his business, and his doctor's, sure, but it was impossible to miss. The man looked unwell, and he sounded it too, voice thin, pacing, erratic, cadence lurching between boast and mumble. All that pomp, and the headliner seemed like he was fighting through it. Then came the words. The speech opened with the sort of claim you only make if you assume no one will check. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. No, he isn't. And no, it isn't. American presidents have been feted in royal residences since before Trump was a brand, much less a politician. He tried to tie the line to the second state visit, then doubled back to suggest he hoped it would also be the last, which is not how protocol or calendars work. The room, an ocean of gold leaf and tinkling crystal, did the heavy lifting while the substance failed to show up. He pivoted to a humble brag about endurance. I just stood in line and shook about 150 hands, which might have landed better if not paired with the very visible state of his own. The line that followed was accidental self-parody. Praise for King Charles's memory because he knew every single person and every single company, even the ones with names like XYZQ3. The room chuckled obligingly. The British are polite, they clap on cue.
In a world saturated with information, finding the truth requires unwavering dedication and independent voices. America Facticity stands as a beacon for factual, unbiased reporting, delivering the stories that truly matter. Join our membership for just $9 a month. Your support helps us grow our team and create even better content. Find the link in the description below.
And then he starts to mention shaking people's hands. Well, after seeing your hand, Donald, I don't really know if that was the right idea. Donald Trump says, I will tell you I stood in line and shook about 150 hands. That's not the reason why your hand looks the way it looks rotting. And Donald Trump says, the king knew everybody's name. Well, that's kind of what you do with people you know. You kind of remember their names. I know that's a difficult concept for you as you call the Prime Minister of Japan Mr. Japan, or the CEO of Toyota or Honda or whatever. You just call them the company name. But people sometimes learn other people's names, Donald. Here, play this clip.
I'll tell you that I just stood in line and shook about 150 hands. And the king knew every single person and every single company, and some of them had bad names like XYZ-Q3, and he knew every one of them, or at least I think he did, because nobody was complaining. I was very impressed with that.
Then Donald Trump goes on this rant. I mean, just look at this room, by the way, too, though. Like, it's such a bad look, not just for the United States. It's a bad look for the UK as well. There are so many people who can't afford groceries right now. There were so many people who are struggling, living paycheck to paycheck right now, being psychologically tortured. There are so many people who can't afford homes, who are struggling to just keep their health care to stay alive. And they're at this like golden palace and golden carriages. Look at this room right here. And then Trump's like, we're the hottest country right now. No, we're not. We're not. We're not the hottest country. Like, America's at its weakest right now than it's ever been in its history. But anyway, play this clip.
Bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It's irreplaceable and unbreakable. And we are, as a country, as you know, doing unbelievably well. We had a very sick country 1 year ago, and today, I believe we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. In fact, nobody's even questioning it, but we owe so much of that to you and the footing that you gave us when we started.
Trump's broader message was a familiar stew of vagueness and victory laps. America, he declared, had been very sick a year ago and is now the hottest country anywhere in the world. Nobody's even questioning it. That may fly on a rally stage, but it clangs in a hall where every gilded surface reflects reality back at you. Outside the castle walls, inflation still eats paychecks. Housing is a crisis in 3 dimensions, and basic life, groceries, childcare, healthcare, feels like a rigged game to millions. If we're the hottest, it's from a fever, not a glow-up. He swung into a mini lecture about defending the exceptional heritage of the English-speaking world, a phrase designed to sound profound while quietly implying a civilizational club with a selective guest list. Moments later, he rattled off a roll call of canonical British writers: Shakespeare, Dickens, Tolkien, pronounced like a coin, Lewis, Orwell, Kipling, as though name-checking a syllabus could stand in for a worldview. A camera cut found Melania's practiced half-smile locked in place as the list unspooled. The room applauded its own sense of itself. If the speech felt like it had been stitched together from the greatest hits of 1,000 prior podiums, that's because it was. It wasn't about ideas. It was about images. Trump in a throne room flanked by royalty, draped in legitimacy by the sheer density of tradition in the walls. The problem is that images don't exist in a vacuum. They sit against the world outside them, and on that day, the world answered back loudly. Across London, thousands gathered for a Stop Trump march, converging on Parliament Square with drums, banners, and a mix of satire and fury that the Brits do better than anyone. The crowd wasn't as massive as the 2019 Blimp Day high-water mark, but it was broad. Ukrainians waving blue and yellow, Palestinians waving red, white, green, union organizers with hand-painted cardboard, parents with strollers, old-school Tories who just don't like chaos. A troop batted around a blow-up J.D. Vance head like an unwanted beach ball. Others arrived in masks: Trump, Farage, Putin, Elon, as if to say the click is international and the con is global. From the stage, speakers ran through a litany that rarely makes it into state dinners: the cost of policing such visits, the absurdity of rolling out a red carpet for a man convicted of felonies back home, the message it sends to countries that take the rule of law seriously.
Then Donald Trump talks about how we must defend the exceptional heritage that makes us who we are, and we need to focus on the English-speaking world. Okay, well then, why, if you believe that, Donald, then why are you basically letting Putin do whatever the hell he wants? Here, play this clip.
Together we've done more good for humanity than any 2 countries in all of history. Together we must defend the exceptional heritage that makes us who we are, and we must continue to stand for the values and the people of the English-speaking world, and we do indeed stand for that.
And then Donald Trump just starts listing names of authors. And by the way, you can see like Melania there. Very bizarre scene. Play this clip.
Perfected in the pages of Shakespeare and Dickens and Tolkien, Lewis, Orwell, and Kipling. Incredible people. Unbelievable people like we have rarely seen before, probably won't see.
Let's take a look at what's going on in Parliament Square, London. Let's take a look at what's happening there. You've got protesters tossing J.D. Vance balls around there. Just play this clip. Here are the London protests. Let's play it.
This is not how I envisaged this going. I mean, it's try and keep it away from the cameras, people. Send it backwards. There we go. Let's pop that down there. We don't want J.D. Vance. That's right. That's absolutely correct. Listen, we have incredible...
Put the sound up here. This is part of the Trump Not Welcome protest march. Hat tip to Rhythms of Resistance, who's handling the drumming. You got some mini angry baby Trump balloons over there as well. Take a look right here.
A Sky News reporter summarized it with a mixture of British restraint and plain truth. The pageantry in Windsor was splendid, yes, but impossible to ignore were the thousands a few miles away who saw the whole thing as farce. Some called it sickening to watch the king and queen standing beside Trump. Others simply called it a waste. Millions of pounds last time, for what? And wondered aloud what diplomatic return the spectacle possibly yields. One older protester nailed the mood with an analogy as indelicate as it was apt. Appeasement doesn't work. When someone shows you what they are, drape them in velvet and they will still be what they are. Back inside, King Charles offered the sort of toast that tries to thread a needle. He leaned into warmth. Shared history, intertwined peoples, and with a twinkle, golf. British soil, he joked, makes rather splendid courses, a line that let the room exhale and the tabloids have their headline, then a sly historical aside. In the 1970s, the media once tried to deepen the special relationship by marrying him into the Nixon family. The joke worked because it acknowledged the theater without giving into it. The king knows the power of pageantry, but he also knows the risk of becoming its prisoner. For those counting etiquette, there was a small breach, Trump striding a pace ahead of the king during the inspection of the Guard of Honor. It's a minor offense, yes, and it happens, but etiquette is part of the point. If you come for the crown's legitimacy, you also submit a little to its choreography. Striding ahead read like what it often reads like with him: rules are for others. The pageantry would have been easier to swallow if not for the hard cut to the reality show playing across the Atlantic. While Windsor polished the silver, Congress was busy muffling a discussion many Americans actually care about. In a committee hearing, a Democratic member moved to subpoena the Treasury Department for suspicious activity reports tied to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their co-conspirators. About $1.5 billion worth of transactions. Before she could finish the motion, Republicans moved to table it. The chair allowed her to complete the sentence, then promptly shut down debate. Bang. Done. The same political movement that has spent months turning Epstein into a cudgel suddenly didn't want to see the paperwork that might turn the cudgel into facts.
Play it.
Let's have a look.
It's another scene. You'll see the crowds have gathered in central London to protest Trump. Let's play it. Here's how they were referring to the Stop the Trump coalition on Sky News. Good reporting there. Let's play it.
Well, they're loud, they're proud, and they're certainly trying to drown out all the pageantry that's happening at Windsor, Mark, but I'm not sure if they're doing a good job at it or not, really. I mean, a lot of the people here have not been watching those gorgeous opulent pictures from Windsor. Instead, they have been focused very much on making their voices of opposition heard. I mean, it's a real mixture in the crowd today. We've seen people carrying Ukrainian flags, people with Palestinian flags, people that have got banners that cite that, that infamous relationship between the predator Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, an image that he, of course, would rather not be showcased today. But frankly, whilst all eyes have been on Windsor, it's been very hard, in a sense, to ignore the voices of the people here today. The crowd, you're right, estimated to be thought about 5,000 in size. It's thought the last time that there was a state visit for Donald Trump in 2019, where the crowds packed out Trafalgar Square, where we saw that giant blimp of Donald Trump lifted above the crowd. It's thought the crowd, the numbers there were nearing 100,000. So perhaps organisers might be a little disappointed in the numbers that have turned out. However, there is currently behind me in Parliament Square a huge rally with people, speakers on stage, voicing their thoughts regarding this visit. You know, they've talked to me about how they feel as though the flattery is farcical, how the pomp and the pageantry should have been saved for someone that deserves it. Some of those people voicing their idea of saying they feel sick at the sight of, King Charles and the Queen next to Donald Trump, and the visit and the rolling out of the red carpet is not sitting well with some, in direct contrast, as Mark Stone said there, to the pro-Trump supporters that you've seen down in Windsor. There have been pockets of support for him because there are a huge number of people who do want him here. More than 40% of people during an attitude survey of Donald Trump's visit over the weekend do actually want this state visit to go ahead.
This came on the heels of Kash Patel, Trump ally, former national security official, and now GOP point man in assorted inquisitions, telling senators with a straight face that there's no credible information in FBI files that Epstein trafficked anyone to anyone, a lone wolf, he implied, a billionaire pedophile who somehow operated an international trafficking scheme without clients. The claim would be laughable if it weren't so indecent. Paired with the move to block the subpoena, it became something else, a tell. When the trail might loop back to the club quietly pulls up the drawbridge. If you felt whiplash jumping between a golden carriage and a buried subpoena, you weren't alone. The whiplash got worse with a single chart. A new national poll showing only 20% of American adults think the economy is improving. You can debate the drivers, interest rates, housing, the price of a cart of groceries, but you can't debate the sentiment. Against that reality, the image of a man who calls himself the tribune of the working class riding in a gold-painted coach to a castle begins to look less like strength and more like satire. Who exactly is this for? The defenders will say, for the alliance. For continuity, for the relationship that has, across a century, saved the democratic world more than once. There's truth in that. Ritual matters. Nations need the glue of ceremonies that are bigger than any one person, especially during anxious times. But ceremony is only as good as the message it sends, and the message here was muddled. If you must do velvet and trumpets, marry it to something concrete. What were the deliverables? What did the United States get beyond drone footage and a menu? What did Britain get beyond headlines and hotel bills? One answer may arrive sooner than Trump would like. Reporting out of London indicated that the United Kingdom is preparing to recognize a Palestinian state after the visit. If the timing holds, and it's Westminster, so always an if, the symbolism will be its own statement. Not a reward or a rebuke, just a rebalancing.
Gentleman, state the motion.
Okay. Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent to produce or otherwise make available to the committee all suspicious activity reports in the possession of the Treasury Department, identifying the roughly $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions.
California is recognized.
I move to lay the motion on the table.
The motion is not debatable.
I didn't finish.
She hadn't completed the motion. Is it proper to cut it off before it's completed, Mr. Chairman?
Finish your last sentence there. The gentlelady can finish.
Okay, so we're asking them to identify the roughly $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions related to the sex trafficking crimes of Epstein, Maxwell, and their co-conspirators. And as we know, Mr. Patel said that the Treasury might have that information.
The motion on the table.
Yep. The motion not debatable. The question occurs on the motion to table. Those in favor say aye.
And so while Donald Trump is riding around in a golden carriage, right now in the United States, the latest YouGov Economist poll shows that only 20% of adults in the United States think that the economy is actually getting better. Take a look right here. In contrast, this was Donald Trump in that carriage, enjoying his golden carriage ride at Windsor Castle. This is what UK taxpayers and American taxpayers are paying for. Let's play it.
In any event, the main objective is pageantry. Apparently, the president told the pool press who were flying with him overnight yesterday, enjoy yourselves, okay? He said he was really looking forward to this. He said it's going to be a beautiful event.
An acknowledgement that even as London smiles for the cameras, it will move in its own perceived interest on a file that has convulsed global politics for a century. Trump's team reportedly didn't want that announcement anywhere near his trip. That, too, tells you something. Back to the body language for a moment, because it was impossible to ignore. Trump moved the way people move when they're exhausted, stiff shoulders, careful steps, a micro pause before each handshake, as if measuring grip strength against pain. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. But his orbit has spent months painting him as a force of nature, ageless and indestructible, and the camera disagreed. He looked like a man carrying the strain of legal reality, political pressure, and years spent in a clenched jaw. If he were anyone else, you'd say he should rest. He is not anyone else, so the show goes on. Meanwhile, the British public, who have seen more pageantry than most empires and learned to separate its charm from its costs, gave their measured verdict in the streets, a polite but firm no. Let him come, fine. Feed him, fine. But don't pretend the velvet curtain cloaks what it cloaks. The quotes outside said the quiet part aloud. It's a disgrace to indulge a convicted felon as though the conviction doesn't matter. It's wasteful to spend public money to launder the image of a man whose politics thrive on tearing other people's images down. It's foolish, even dangerous, to normalize someone who speaks about alliances like they are tip jars and who flatters authoritarians like it's a hobby. Inside, the cameras caught the toasts. Outside, the drums kept time. The split screen traveled back across the ocean, where a committee smothered a subpoena about a predator with friends in high places. A party lieutenant insisted the predator acted alone, and a public, asked how they're doing, said plainly, not great. Then the carriage rolled on. That's the thing about pageantry. It's supposed to project confidence. To tell people order exists, the adults are in charge, the institutions are sturdy, the future is navigable. It can do that. It still can. But when the star of the show looks fragile, the script is mostly nonsense, the supporting cast is pulling mic cables behind the scenes to keep inconvenient facts out of the soundtrack, and the people outside are calling out the staging, the magic curdles. The velvet reeds as vanity. The trumpets sound like leaf blowers. There's a cleaner way to do this. If you're going to march a president through a royal dinner with cameras everywhere, insist on a real agenda attached to it. Aid commitments, climate work, meaningful sanctions design, trade harmonization that actually lowers prices for ordinary people. If you're going to praise shared heritage, pair it with shared action. And if you're going to invoke the English-speaking world, make sure you aren't simultaneously praising the very strong man trying to crack that world in half. People notice. They noticed in London. They noticed in Milwaukee and Manchester alike. By the end of the evening, the script had spent itself. The horses clopped, the lanterns swung, the hall emptied, the talking heads filled the air with adjectives. The one image that lingered was the quietest. Trump, a half step off the mark, reaching to shake yet another hand with what looked, frankly, like a hand that had been through a piranha tank. It wasn't the grotesquerie that stuck, it was the metaphor. Something is not right, and no amount of gold leaf fixes rot. So that's the Windsor visit. A gilded room, a weakened speech, a crowd outside that refused to be a prop, a king who knew enough to joke about Nixon because history has a sense of humor. A breezy etiquette breach that said more than any toast, a Congress back home sprinting away from its own demand for accountability on Epstein because the paper trail might be too honest, a poll undercutting the hottest country line, and a foreign policy shoestring hinting that once the motorcade is gone, the grown-ups will do grown-up things whether or not the former president approves. You can like the pageantry and still hate the message. You can respect the crown and still reject the coronation of nonsense. You can believe in alliances and still ask, to what end and for whom? That's what the London streets asked. That's what a lot of Americans are asking as they watch their rent crest and their groceries climb while their leaders float past in carriages. And that's why, when the lights dimmed and the cameras packed up, the night didn't feel triumphant. It felt like a portrait in 4 words: pretty, loud, empty, tired.
And remember, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button.